What if I told you the secret to losing more weight and building more muscle is actually the opposite of working harder? Sounds weird, right? But hear me out. Most people think the gap between their effort and their results is because they are not doing enough. But in many cases, the only thing missing is rest. And more specifically, sleep. Good sleep habits can actually make the difference between seeing no progress at all or seeing great progress in short time. Neglecting sleep could be the main reason stopping you from building muscle and losing weight, even if you exercise and diet a lot. And that's why in this video we're going to look at how sleep directly affects our training results and also the steps that we can take to optimize our sleep and to get the most out of our training. So let's start with the importance of sleep for our fitness journey. If we look at Demon Slayer, we notice that after every big fight, our main cast spends days sleeping trying to recover from their injuries. On a much smaller scale, this is what happens during our sleep after an intense workout. During our workouts, we are not building muscles, we are actually damaging them. But this is a good thing because we are providing our body with a stimulus to build more muscles. However, the actual building of muscles mainly occurs during our sleep, not during our workouts. And this also makes sense when we are looking at what happens in our body during our sleep. We are spending parts of our sleep in a state called deep sleep. And deep sleep is quite important for us because during this state, a hormone called human growth hormone is released. And this hormone is important for repairing damages in your body, especially for connective tissues. But it also stimulates the release of another hormone called IGF-1. And IGF-1 is quite interesting for us if we strive for that anime physique, because it plays an important role in muscle growth and recovery. This already shows us that if we are not getting enough sleep, we're getting less deep sleep, we have less capacity to repair our muscles and grow our muscles. We also have data to back this up. In one study, researchers looked at what happens if you skip one night of sleep, and what they found was a drop of nearly 20% of protein biosynthesis. And if that term is unfamiliar to you, protein biosynthesis is just a process where your body builds new proteins from the amino acids that it gets, for example, out of food. And as protein is the building block of muscles, we can see that we are already losing out on a lot of gains if we are not sleeping enough, because we are not recovering as well, and the muscle growth is also impaired. Okay, maybe you are thinking now, well, I'm not skipping entire nights, so the effect shouldn't be that big, right? And this is only partly true, sadly. Of course, it is better to only sleep 4 hours instead of not sleeping at all. But if we are not sleeping enough over multiple days, we are getting something called sleep debt. And sleep debt just means the accumulation of negative effects of sleep loss on our bodies. This just means that after multiple nights of maybe just 4 hours of sleep, the effect on our body is the same or even worse than if we would skip one total night of sleep. This already shows you if you're not really focusing on sleep, you'll see less progress in total. But that's not all. There are also other effects at play relating sleep to our fitness progress. And one of these effects is related to the perceived effort. Because what has been shown is that the perceived effort of a workout increases if we are not sleeping well. This means that the same workout will feel much harder if we are underslept compared to a day where we got maybe 8 hours of sleep. This kind of creates an illusion that we are actually training hard, and it feels like we're giving our training everything we got, but we're actually not. And this results in a smaller stimulus to build more muscles. And as a consequence, we have less progress over time. And now if we combine this effect with the previous effect, we have a lower ability to build new muscles because the body can produce all the proteins it needs. But then also we're giving our body less of a reason to build new muscles because we can't work hard enough when we are underslept. And these two effects have already a great impact how much results we are seeing. But again, that's not all. There are also other things. And one thing that goes in a kind of different direction is the effect on skill learning. For example, if you want to learn handstands or maybe other calisthenics movements because As calisthenics movements involve several muscle groups, they are quite complex for the body to master. And one sleep stage that is important here is light sleep, which is another sleep stage next to deep sleep, because it has been shown that light sleep improves motor learning. Motor learning just means the learning that your brain does when movement is involved. And even more interestingly, it has been shown that the last 2 hours of a typical 8-hour night are most important for motor skill learning. This also means if you're waking up too early, because maybe you have to go to school or to work and you didn't sleep early enough, you're losing these last 2 hours, or you're losing most of the time during these last 2 hours. Meaning you're losing the biggest progress that you can get on skill learning, and it will take a much longer time to, for example, master a handstand. And now, before we go on to look at how we can actually optimize our sleep, I want to talk about one last aspect, and this is weight loss. Because when we look at these anime characters, we can see that they have quite the low body fat percentage, and this makes them look so aesthetic because their muscles are well defined. So if we want to achieve the shredded anime physique, we have to cut calories at one point during our fitness journey. And here's a study that is super important to understand if you're concerned with weight loss. So in this study, researchers divided people in 2 groups, and both of these groups had the same diet during the study period. The study was like 14 days. The difference was that the first group was only allowed to sleep 5.5 hours, while the other group was allowed to sleep 8.5 hours. And both groups at the end of the study period lost about 3 kilograms of weight. But here comes the interesting part. The sleep-deprived group lost actually most of that weight, about 80%, as lean body mass. And lean body mass includes muscles, but actually not fat. While the other group that slept 8.5 hours every night, they lost about 50% of that weight as fat. Meaning that both groups lost the same amount of weight, but one group lost more fat while the other group lost more muscles. This indicates that your body holds onto fat when you are underslept and on a diet. And I think that's a crazy result, because being on a diet, it's quite hard. You have like no energy during the day. And then being underslept is also quite hard. You have even less energy. And then you're not even getting something out of it. Maybe even harming your progress because you're losing muscles. And okay, so to summarize, if we sleep well, we build more muscles, feel more rested, exercise feels easier, we are learning motor skills faster, and we are more effective at losing fat while preserving muscle mass during a diet. Sounds pretty compelling to focus on sleep, right? But how do we actually optimize our sleep? So personally, I'm struggling with sleep sometimes. And this is not because of some clinical conditions, this is mostly because of my own habits. Sometimes I am watching videos in the evening, watching anime, playing video games, just in general like procrastinating sleep and going quite late to bed, even though I would have had the time to go to sleep early. And from what I can see from the community poll, many of you struggle with sleep as well, or maybe you haven't identified it as a struggle yet, but many of you definitely don't sleep enough on average. So if you are in these upper 3 groups, then you can gain a lot by focusing on sleep. So let's talk about the foundation of good sleep. Because the first thing that we have to know is that it is recommended to sleep between 7 and 9 hours every night, even more for younger people. And this should be the foundation. So we should take enough time out of our day and out of our night and set that aside just with the intention of sleeping. Of course, everyone is different, so you have to experiment where you lie on that spectrum. Personally, I need about 8 hours of sleep, so I spend about 9 hours in bed, because it also takes quite some time to fall asleep, right? So you have to calculate, if you need like 7 hours of sleep, you have to stay in bed longer because of the time to fall asleep, or maybe you're waking up during the night. So that's generally the aim that we are going for. But now that we have set aside the time, there are also other things we can do to improve our sleep. And I've prepared a list of steps we can take. This list is based on some recommendations from actual sleep scientists, so it's not just me yapping all the way. Let's start with the first step, and this is also the most important one. So if you're only doing one thing out of this list, try to do this one. And this is sticking to a sleep schedule. What this essentially means is that it's really beneficial if you wake up at the same time every day and go to bed at the same time every day, even on weekends. This is mainly because the weekend is usually not enough to catch up on the sleep that you lost during the week if you're not sleeping enough. And also it shifts your inner body clock, your circadian rhythm, meaning that if you sleep long in the weekend, it's then again harder to go to bed early, for example on Sunday, and wake up earlier on Monday. In addition, if you have these consistent bedtimes, you're kind of training your body for sleep during these times. So your body sleeps in alignment with your inner clock. This will also improve the quality of your sleep, meaning the benefits that you get from it. Okay, let's look at step number 2. And this is in regards to beverages or food that contains caffeine. And some examples are, of course, coffee, but also tea, dark chocolate, boosters, energy drinks, and so on. And as we know, caffeine is usually used to improve our alertness and give us more energy during the day. But the problem with it is that the chemical, caffeine, it stays quite long in our bodies. It can take over 8 hours until the effect fully wears off. Meaning that if you, for example, drink coffee in the early afternoon, it still can have an effect on your sleep in the night. I know there are some people that say, well, I can drink coffee in the evening and still fall asleep, but it's likely that it still has an effect on your sleep quality. So even if you're sleeping, your sleep will be worse. So if you drink it, maybe do it in the morning. Then the next one would be about naps. So napping is great, especially if you're not sleeping enough to catch up on some of that sleep that you lost during the night. But it can also affect your sleep in a negative way if you are napping too late into the day. For example, if you're napping maybe at 5 o'clock in the evening, then a consequence could be that you have trouble falling asleep later at night again. This is basically in simplified terms because over the day you're building up sleep pressure, and if you nap, you're taking some of that sleep pressure off, meaning that, okay, now your body doesn't feel it needs that much sleep, but it also feels much harder falling asleep. So if you nap, maybe don't do it after 3 p.m. Okay, the next step is about light exposure. And this has two sides. The first one would be that it's really good to get bright light early in the morning. So if you have the possibility, try to go outside, get a bit of sun exposure, because this will help your body calibrate its circadian rhythm, the inner body clock, and in turn will improve the consistency and quality of your sleep. But then there's also the other side of the coin, and this is not getting too much bright light in the evening, because this can interrupt a hormone called melatonin, or the release of that hormone. And melatonin is important for inducing sleep. And bright lights include, sadly, all kinds of screens from devices like computer, phone, tablet, whatever, TV. So it would be good to not look too much at these devices 1 hour before bed. And if that's too difficult, try to at least enable the night mode of these devices. The night mode will reduce the blue light, and this is good because blue light has the biggest capacity on preventing the release of melatonin. Okay, the next step that we can do to improve our sleep ties into technology as well. And this is do not consume stimulating content right before bed. Because if you're doom scrolling or you're getting angry at someone, maybe during a video game, when you go to sleep, you're likely to think about that. This will definitely not help you to fall asleep. So instead, maybe try some relaxing activities. For example, reading a book, some meditation, light stretching, listening to audiobooks and/or music. The next step, and this is based on the biology of the body again, is to sleep in a cool room. Because when you fall asleep, and also during the night, your body core temperature drops. This also means that a cold room makes it easier to fall asleep and also to stay asleep. And also something that relates to this step is to not eat big meals right before bed, because your body needs to digest the food then, and this takes some energy and produces heat, making it more difficult to fall asleep, again, because of the temperature. And the last one that I think is also quite important is actually not something you're doing in the evening, but earlier or during the day. And this is to have a zero distraction time to the day, meaning that you should take some time out of your day. You can still do activities there, maybe like make the dishes or whatever, but do not distract you at all. So no audiobooks, no podcasts, no music, and not watching videos or anything else. So just focus on the activity that you're doing and give your mind some idle time. Because your mind can then use that time to process some of the things that happen during the day, processing some emotions. If the only time where you are not distracting yourself is when you are going to sleep, then your mind will probably start thinking about a lot of things and it takes quite some time to fall asleep. But if you already have done some of it during the day, then your mind is not that occupied with it. Okay, that was the list of my sleep recommendations. Maybe you have some other things that you are doing in your wind down routine. Maybe write them in the comments so that we can learn from you as well. Okay, before ending this video, I want to give a quick shout out to the book of Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. Because I read it recently and it inspired me to make this video. Because I was like, dang, sleep is so important, so I should share some of that info. So if you want to learn much more about sleep, I can recommend checking out that book. That was it. I hope you learned something new and maybe see you in the next video. Cheers.